Are you guys ready for this? So we're going to watch a Tim Pool debate on the Tim Pool podcast between Laura Loomer and Bill Kristol. No, not Bill Kristol. Bill Mitchell. Now, Bill Mitchell is a conservative Ron DeSantis supporter. Laura Loomer is, well, I would say she's a little bit more far right than conservative. I would say she's a far right Donald Trump supporter. Now, I know Laura Loomer from a few instances. She's ran for Congress a few times, never accepting when she very clearly lost every time. She has also been banned from Twitter. She got banned from Twitter because after a terror attack, she called for a non-Muslim taxi service. After getting banned from Twitter, she then handcuffed herself to Twitter HQ and covered herself in the Star of David, comparing her getting banned from Twitter to the Jews getting killed in the Holocaust. Laura Loomer is Jewish. She also, during Kanye West's appearance on the Alex Jones podcast, where he did the weird Netanyahu like puppeteering and said how much she loved Hitler, she called in to be the resident Jew and say that it's fine that Kanye West hates Jews and liking Hitler is okay as a Jewish person. So she has weirdly used her Jewishness to defend anti-Semitism or cover for anti-Semitism, and she said a lot of strange and pretty bizarre things in the past, but has gotten endorsed by Trump multiple times on the campaign trail, so she isn't completely unnotable. And her one day being in Congress isn't completely impossible. She might have to move around a few more legislative districts, though. Anyway, let's watch her debate, Ron DeSantis versus Donald Trump with Bill Mitchell. It's sure to be absolutely awful.
Okay, just tweeted that out. So thanks so much for having me and inviting me to your studio. My name is Laura Loomer. And of course, we've known each other for several years, but I'm an investigative journalist. I'm an activist, and She's an investigative journalist. You know, when I hear people say that, I'm always interested in what they mean by that. Like, what investigative journalism have they done? What investigations have they conducted? Like Laura Loomer with the magnifying glass, Sherlock Holming it up, you know, in a crime scene. Yeah, I busted the murder of 87, actually. I busted the bite of 87. I figured out who that was. That was me. I doubt that's what Laura Loomer accomplished. Like you know, I've seen a lot of journalists put their life on the line for journalism. I'd just be very interested to see what's her type of journalism. And I thought she was a political candidate, but I guess that's her, you know, just a one-off thing. A lot of people know me because, well, for several years, I was the most banned woman in the world, the most banned. One of the first people in this country, along with Alex Jones and others, to be completely deplatformed.
Yeah, can I just say that there are like women in Iran who are in prison and are still in prison for speaking out against their governments. There are women in North Korea who will spend the rest of their days with their families in labor camps for speaking out against their government. There are women who have been murdered. There are women who have been beheaded by organizations like ISIS. I think there's a lot of women who are more censored than, I don't know, getting banned off of Twitter. Why can't it ever be like I've been banned, I've been censored? It has to always be, and I don't know if this is a Trumpism, it always has to be the most banned, the most oppressed, the most downtrodden. It can't ever be anything but the maximalist, the maximalist oppression.
Pretty much everywhere, right? I only recently just got my Twitter account back in December, but I'm still banned everywhere else, right?
So you were debanked too, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So I got debanked, and then as you reported, you were one of the only people to really...
Debanking is weird, though. I will say the people losing their bank stuff that is weird.
Report on my congressional campaign and the censorship made history because I ran for Congress in 2020 and 2022 in Florida as an America First Republican. And during both election seasons, I was the first and only deplatformed, like completely deplatformed candidate in United States history. And the big tech social media companies actually created policies specifically targeting me and my campaign. So they had said originally at Twitter, they're going to allow every single candidate for Congress or governor to have an account.
Has donated $5.
Hey.
Laura Loomer tried to flirt with a Nazi by saying she has big tits and an Ashkenazi IQ. Video link in dono.
What? What? She said what? She said, huh? She said, who's it, what's it?
Your eyes look so good. You're like beautiful.
Thank you.
You're like an Aryan degenerate goddess.
Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. You're Aryan too.
I know, but I'm Jewish.
It's okay.
The Nazis hate me.
It's fine.
The alt-right people want to put me in a gas chamber because they're obsessed with the Jews.
I think they're just memeing on you, but it's okay.
They're just jealous because I have big tits and an Ashkenazi IQ.
Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah.
You got it.
I'm gonna tell you a secret. Like, do you know so many people in this movement who preach trad life are like.
I can't even begin to break down. Like, I don't know what it is with her and her Jewishness that's so weird, man. Like, I don't know if this is awkward to comment on, but she uses her Jewishness as a cudgel to defend some of the weirdest anti-Semitism. And it's very weird to see. Very strange to see. I guess, like, there's a usefulness there, and she wants to be useful to the far-right activists around her, and so she can use that identity as kind of like a shield, like she tried to do for Kanye during the Alex Jones interview when he was literally just like, Hitler is great, whoa, Hitler! And she was like, well, when you think about it as a Jew, you know, everyone loves everyone, so technically you could love Hitler too. It was just like the lowest brow possible defense, just no thought whatsoever, just whatever was possible to please the crowd.
Out, and I was the only one. They said, except Laura Loomer, Cassandra Fairbanks actually contacted the Twitter spokesperson and said, so are you going to reinstate Laura Loomer? And they said, everyone but Laura Loomer. And then, of course, everyone knows I won my primary in Florida in President Trump's home district in Palm Beach. That was District 21 at the time. And
then she got stomped in the general because no one wanted anything to do with her.
It's an honor because President Trump voted for me in the primary and the general. And even as the declared Republican candidate on the ballot for the general election in 2020, they still wouldn't allow me to have any social media. So, and then of course I ran again in 2022. And well, it's hard to get elected to office when you're completely silenced and we live in a digital public.
No, it isn't. Do you know how many candidates? Look. Social media is important for running a modern campaign, but social media is just one aspect of running a campaign. You can win a campaign without Twitter. You can win a campaign without Facebook. You just need to build those local ties. But does she have those local ties in Florida? Does she have these local ties that she was building? Where is she from? Is she from that district in Florida? Because if I remember correctly, I mean, she kind of carpet-bagged it, from what I remember, that she moved to a district that there was going to be an election in order to run, if I remember correctly. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she did grow up there. Maybe I was wrong and she just so happened to grow up in Trump's district. Does anybody know where she grew up? Let's look it up. Laura Loomer. Can we look up where she's from? She is, it doesn't say where she is from. She ran in Florida, but she was born in Arizona, Tucson, Arizona. Well, she certainly didn't run in Arizona. When did she move to Florida? On January 14th, dude, reading her Wikipedia is wild. It is like everything in here is gold. On January 14, 2019, Loomer convinced several men she met in Home Depot parking lot, who she claimed were undocumented, to jump the fence with her at Nancy Pelosi's California home. The group set a tent up on Pelosi's lawn to protest immigration before being removed by police. They were not arrested. My goodness. Did she move there? I don't know if she moved there or not before. It just says she ran in 2022. It looks like she ran in the same district twice. Anyway, back to this.
Right on.
And now, of course, I'm doing everything that I can to help President Trump.
I think in 2022 she didn't even win the primary, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to remember though, because election's been like 3 years.
The greatest president we've ever had in this country get elected.
Right on. Kyle?
The greatest president. See, there it is, the Trumpism. It has to be, I'm the most oppressed woman in America, in the world. It can't be, oh, they've been banned off a bunch of platforms. The best president ever. It can't be a president that I agree with. Or it has to be the greatest. Better than Lincoln, better than Washington.
So, name's Kyle Becker. I'm CEO of Becker News. I'll be doing a Relentless podcast later on this month. I'll be launching that with a producer down in.
Okay, this is really cool, but I want to stick to Bill Mitchell and Laura Loomer. That's what I'm real interested in.
Appreciate. So, I appreciate the.
And I'm the host of.
For sure. Look forward to this.
And Bill, who are you?
Hi, yes, I'm Bill Mitchell, and I'm the host of Your Voice America. I've been around for a while. I was very involved in the Trump
You want
2016.
slide this way just a little bit? Yeah, sorry.
Is that a little better?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And then just grab that mic. Sorry about that.
I was very involved in the Trump 20. Where's camera mic going? This one?
Yeah.
Okay. I was very involved in the Trump 2016 campaign. MIT ranked me as the 26th most influential person, and that because of the Twitter feed. And on election night, my Twitter feed did about 90 million hits. And so my original choice was Trump with DeSantis as a VP. But
Also, when you think about like Laura Loomer running in her district, how many of Laura Loomer's followers were people actually from her district? That's a good question. That's an important question, I think.
Trump wasn't feeling that. And so I decided to shift over to DeSantis. So now I'm a big DeSantis advocate. And I understand that a lot of folks on the Trump side see me as Benedict Arnold now because I was such a huge Trump guy. And now I'm a big DeSantis person. But, I'm here to have just a debate of the ideas and to strategize because, at the end of the day, we need
Okay, one second. Ben Thorpe just added me on Twitter. At DylanBurnsTV, we should talk sometime. Don't believe the hype. I assume when he says believe the hype, what I'm being told from everybody I ask about Ben Thorpe is that he's an extremely creepy and sneaky person. Now, I never talked to Ben Thorpe, so I don't know if this is an accurate assessment. But when I say everybody I ask about it tells me this, the sneaky part was told to me by two people. Everyone asserts that he's creepy. And has like weird family relationship stuff online, a lot of drama. And, I think I'm trying to avoid drama. And he went to my Discord and he apparently added me. Danabo told me that. I don't check all of my ads all the time. I only check it sometimes. He added me in Discord. Now he's adding me on Twitter. He seems to really want to talk to me. And he wants to talk to me about contraceptives, which that kind of surprised me because it's a topic that I do care about. I do believe that family planning is very important, but not what I expected. Don't fall down the Thorpe hole. What do you guys think? Okay, let me just ask you guys quick before we get back to that debate. 1, if you think I should talk to this guy. 2, if you think I shouldn't. Site chat votes always weighted. Okay, as always. Okay, you guys do not want me to talk to this person. Okay. And the only person saying 1 is somebody who's saying, I don't know who it is. Okay, there's a few 1s, but mostly 2s. And that's both in gutter chat and site chat. Okay, well, I guess I got my answer. Okay, well. If I don't really know this guy that much, and you guys don't really want me to talk to him, then I don't know what would be my motivation. Anyway, let's get back to this.
to win this thing.
Right on.
So it's not that Trump wasn't feeling it. It's unconstitutional, right? So you do know that you can't have a presidential candidate and a vice presidential candidate from the same state on the same ballot. So a lot of people push this idea that, oh, wow, it's going to be a Trump DeSantis ticket, and DeSantis is going to be the VP. But people don't seem to understand that, you can't have a presidential candidate and a vice presidential ticket.
It'd be really silly if Trump chose DeSantis as VP too, because I feel like, if anything, Trump would want to find a way to win over the independent. Now, this is if Trump's being smart about it. Trump has alienated a ton of independents. The last poll I saw, that 64% of Americans will not vote for Trump. Now, obviously, that still isn't impossible to win, but he's not polling well with independents, and he's going to need independents if he's going to win. He's going to need that white suburbanite mom if he's going to win the country. And in order to win them, I don't think Ron DeSantis is the solution. They're going to have to find somebody to complement Trump. Mike Pence was to win the evangelicals during the Republican primary. That doesn't really seem necessary anymore. Trump is dominating with evangelicals. So it would make more sense for him to pick somebody who could try to win over independents. Who would that be? I don't know. I think Trump might be so toxic that there's not really many people you could pick to do that without some big change in how Trump behaves.
From the same state. And now that we know that President Trump changed his residency from New York to Florida, he's a Floridian. And there are currently 3 Floridians running for president in the state of Florida, right? You have President Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and Francis Suarez, the mayor of Miami.
So that's just a quick clarification.
I just want to say quick, it really did. I remember Sam Cedar said, and I didn't know how much I believed him, but he said that once more people got to know who Ron DeSantis was, and people really got to like listen to him and see what the type of stuff he's been up to in Florida, people would very quickly grow a distaste for him. I didn't think it would be this fast. I thought it would at least, if it did happen, that it would at least be past the first primary. But the fact that he's down, like he's at 19% to Trump's like 44% in Iowa. I mean, the fact that in some states, Ramaswamy is ahead of him. In one state, I believe it was New Hampshire, Chris Christie's ahead of him. It's not good, man. That is brutal. I mean, I'm not saying it's not good as in I think that's bad. I'm saying it's not good for Ron DeSantis. I think it's hilarious.
Article 2 of the Constitution states the electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for 2 persons.
Did you guys see that like Homelander meme with Ron DeSantis? I don't know if you guys saw this. Let's see if we can bring it up quick. DeSantis Homelander. If you doesn't this remind you of the Homelander scene where Homelander the audio goes dee and like Homelander's like looking at the camera and he's like twitching and he's getting uncomfortable. This reminds me very much of that scene. I think somebody actually pulled them and put them to compare it. Oh, here it is. Yeah, he's not doing well, man. He's not doing well.
Of whom one at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. I heard a lot about this. I didn't know if that was true or not.
It is true, yeah. And Roger Stone, of course, who's a really great friend of mine, and also President Trump's longest friend and former advisor, well, current advisor, I believe, as well. He has written extensively about this, and so. It's important for people to understand this because there was really this demonization of President Trump, right? Something like, oh, well, he just doesn't want to have DeSantis as a VP because, it would show him up and it's all about President Trump's ego when really it's actually in our Constitution. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, well, there's no constitutional rule against 2 people being from the same state, although there may be a situation where you have a problem with the electors. However, people forget that George Bush and Cheney were both from Texas, and Cheney went ahead and changed his residency to Wyoming so they could run together. So Trump could have gone to New York, he could have gone to Las Vegas as far as residency, and they could have run together. So it's not a impossible leap.
Why would President Trump want to go to a hostile blue state where you have district attorneys and prosecutors trying to come after him?
To become president. I mean, okay, look, I don't want to be like the super cutthroat, like politics is politics. Like I'm LBJ, we're going to do what's necessary. I don't want to do that. But if changing your residency could get you a VP candidate that gives you a better chance of winning the presidency, then you do what you got to do, right? That would make sense. Definitely when Trump's running uphill already. So if Trump changes his residency to New York would mean he gets a VP candidate that would actually help him win, then no matter if there's a district attorney there that doesn't like him, right? There's people in Florida there that don't like him. Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump lives in Florida, and he's suggested that the governor of Florida is a kitty diddler. I don't know if you guys remember that Truth Social post. He makes a lot of crazy Truth Social posts. So, like, all I'm saying is I don't think that that would be an impossible barrier for Trump. But I also don't think Ron DeSantis was worth it.
Just correcting the record because you said that it was because of President Trump, right? And we want to be factual here.
Well, as a matter of factual, we're talking about a subjective issue here. And factually, he could have gone there. He decided not to. And my belief is that Trump does not want to share the stage with another alpha male. And let me explain.
But no, but Ron DeSantis is the one that's.
Donald Trump doesn't want to share a stage with another alpha male. Donald Trump doesn't want to share a stage with another alpha male. I don't think that Donald Trump is scared of Ron DeSantis showing him up particularly. I think he's scared of anyone showing him up particularly. And I think Ron DeSantis is just like one option of it. And also, Ron DeSantis directly challenged him by running against him. And I think that's how Donald Trump views everybody who's running against him in the primary, as directly challenging his authority.
Share the stage with another alpha male. And
no,
now,
actually,
here's, let me explain.
But Ron DeSantis is the one that's on the record actually saying that he's not really a number 2 kind of guy. He said, "Oh, I'm more of an executive guy." You could look it up. Direct quote.
Let me explain to you.
So it's Ron DeSantis, not Trump.
Dude, this is gonna get heated so fast. I can feel it. Let me explain to you. This is not gonna go well.
Explain to you why. Is it okay? If
yeah.
Let me explain to you why I wanted this relationship. Because Trump is more of a CEO type. I was a headhunter for many years. So Trump is more of a CEO type personality. He's more the guy that stands there, is a showman, is the front man, is the guy that stands on the hill, says, points that away. Okay. DeSantis is more like we would have in corporate world of a president who runs the day-to-day operations. And my goal was to have Trump as a front man, to give him another bite at the apple, because I felt like he was ripped off in 2020. And then have DeSantis.
He was ripped off in 2020. he illegally accessing voting machines, making fake elector plots, writing up executive order to seize voting machines using the military. Yeah, he was ripped off real bad. Mike Pence, overthrow the election, make me king. Ripped off real bad.
Running the operations behind the scenes, because DeSantis is a extremely brilliant, Harvard-educated legislator. Okay, he understands legislation to the granular level. Trump is famous for not wanting to read, not wanting to dive into documents, wanting bullet points on things. So I don't think that Trump was very good at running the day-to-day operations of the White House. That's where he failed. So I like the idea of that 1-2 punch coming together, and then DeSantis could work for Trump for 4 years as an apprenticeship and then take over for 8 years.
If Ron DeSantis is such a scholar, though, right? You're saying that, oh, he's so Ivy League and he's such an expert on the Constitution. Why does so much of the legislation that he has signed into law get struck down on grounds that it's unconstitutional? You would think that a guy that claims that...
That's true. That's true.
He's such a hotshot Harvard-trained lawyer, right? And a Yale athlete would... be able to pass
I don't know about the Yale athlete part.
So much. You obviously have several things in mind. Like, give me an example.
Well, the big tech social media bill, right? So Ron DeSantis loves talking about how, oh, it's the free state of Florida, and we have free and fair elections in the free state of Florida, and we don't have censorship. And he famously went on Tucker Carlson's show and said that he had made it illegal in the state of Florida for candidates running for office to be banned on social media, and said that if candidates were banned and deplatformed, that they were going to, the state of Florida was going to institute fines against the big tech companies. Well, I would know, given the fact that I was the only candidate in the state of Florida that was completely deplatformed. But I guess, because I'm pro-Trump, and, we know that Ron DeSantis has been planning his presidential campaign for the last 2.5 years in the state of Florida, he had no intention of actually implementing this. And then, of course, a judge found that because...
I don't know if the reason he didn't implement it was because she's pro-Trump. I just don't even know if he would be able to implement that.
They made the bill revolve around Section 230, which, if he really is such a constitutional genius, as you're saying, he should know that the states don't have the authority to modify Section 230 because that's a federal law, right? It's a federal issue. So I just think that's important because, there's really just been this facade that's been created for Ron DeSantis. I would say that he's really a Manchurian candidate. The media and the GOP establishment has been grooming him. Okay, Fox News, Rupert Murdoch.
Like Karen DiGiorno, your Bush campaign manager?
I want to go back because I think there was something important that you brought up. You were saying you wanted it to be Trump.
Did he just throw heat at her campaign manager? The campaign manager catching strays.
DeSantis.
That's what I wanted originally.
And I agree.
Yeah. I thought that would have checked all the boxes.
And for the same reasons. That
Dude, I love watching right-wing infighting because no matter what happens, I feel like I win.
Trump is the guy. He's the chief, but he needs a right-hand man who's going to execute properly. However, it sounds like Ron DeSantis is the one at fault for that not happening. He's the one who said, I'm not a number 2 kind of guy. I'm going to run for president.
He said, I'm not a number 2 kind of guy long after Trump had rejected and was calling him meatball and sanctimonious and all these other sophomore.
That's because he was running for president.
But he said this after that had taken place. He did not say this.
No, that's dishonest. He's been planning a presidential campaign for the last 2.5 years, okay? It's been widely reported in the state of Florida and really nationally now that Ron DeSantis has been laying the groundwork for a presidential campaign since November of 2020. And, you know, I ran for Congress in Palm Beach County, and a lot of the donors who are on Ron DeSantis's finance committee for his campaign, right? These are people who told me point blank in 2020 and 2021 during private meetings that they had been asked to be on his 2024 presidential finance committee. So this has been in the works for a long time. Obviously, Ron DeSantis knew that, you know, he didn't just wake up in May when he filed and say, oh, you know, I'm going to run for president. Right. He pressured the Florida legislature, okay, in violation of Florida's Resign to Run law and really in violation of just ethical standards, period, to change the Florida Resign to Run law. He hand appointed the Florida Secretary of State, Cord Bird, in May of 2022. And then he had Cord Bird quietly change the rules in the Florida Political Handbook so that you could transfer funds from a Florida State Political Committee, which is, you know, before this change was made, you couldn't transfer funds, right, from state to federal entities. He had him quietly change the handbook so that he could transfer the money that he raised when he was governor over to the federal Never Back Down super PAC, right? So it just shows he doesn't really have moral character. He's willing to bend the rules.
Wait, a representative of Donald Trump is saying somebody else doesn't have moral character?
You're trying to say that this is about President Trump's ego when if we're...
I would really love for the Republican primary to become a question of moral character.
Really being honest here, Ron DeSantis had been planning to run for president even, you know, up until the time, like days before the 2020 presidential election, which we all know was stolen.
I could say I have no problem if someone said both of them are lacking in moral character. An argument against Trump and an argument to DeSantis are two separate things. If DeSantis was changing the rules and preparing to run as president for a long time, I mean, that's that argument for, you know, you have to make your argument as to why he should or should not have done that. We can insult Trump, but that doesn't change anything Ron DeSantis did.
Right.
Okay, listen, I have no problem with Ron DeSantis wanting to be president of the United States. Here's the problem that I have. And this is what turned the table for me. When maybe finally say, okay, I'm done with Trump. And so many people that follow me on Twitter that were former Trump supporters have finally said, I'm done with Trump. When President Trump came out and he said 3 days before DeSantis's election, he started calling him Ron DeSanctimonious. And then he said that Ron DeSantis is a globalist and a rhino, for which there was no evidence whatsoever. This was the lie that I could not...
He didn't call him a globalist and a rhino before the election.
I let you talk.
But you're lying, Bill. You're lying.
You let her talk, man.
He called him
wait a minute. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and let her talk over me. You're not going to talk over me.
I'll let you talk, but we can't allow him to lie to millions of people.
Well, then wait and talk after, Laura. I swear.
You're not going to talk. You're not going to talk over me.
Just respond after he finishes.
Just wait and let me finish talking. Okay. This is why I don't let you in my spaces on Twitter, because you talk over.
No, you don't let me in your spaces because you know that you'd be Loomered and totally destroyed.
You'd be Loomered. You'd be Loomered. Oh my God. Oh God. Everybody fear the Loomering. The Loomering is coming. Gonna get Loomered. Oh, Loomered. You're gonna get totally Loomered. Oh, I love it. Love it. I'm going to hit you with the old Loomerang. I love it, man.
Okay. Like you can't, I'm already...
You're going to get totally Loomered. I'm sorry, I love it.
I'm able to cite these encyclopedia facts that are ingrained in my mind about Florida law, and all you have is, oh, Orange Man bad, Trump is so bad, oh, he's so mean. Like, do you actually have any facts or policy, or do you know about any of the laws that Ron DeSantis changed? Or are you just a mouthpiece?
Let him finish, and then
she literally is incapable of controlling herself.
No, I can control myself, but you're not going to lie about President Trump.
This is why Marjorie Taylor Greene calls you crazy.
Okay.
This is why Marjorie Taylor Greene says you should not work for Trump because she considers you crazy. I know this is hot.
Damn, she out crazied the crazy. Bill Mitchell shoots back.
You think I care about what a congresswoman who cheated on her husband and
Damn, she shot back with the she's a slut. Oh my God.
There we go.
is basically
This is great. I hope they all slaughter each other.
a mouthpiece for Kevin McCarthy. You think I care about what she thinks?
I want to make my point. Please.
Damn, Marjorie Taylor Greene's a puppet for the establishment.
Please.
This is great. I'm loving every moment of this.
Yeah, we'll have him make his point, and then you can respond, Laura.
So Trump said that Ron DeSantis is a rhino. Trump said that Ron DeSantis is a globalist. There is no evidence of that.
Hey, by the way, if there's any time that you could donate to the stream, that you could contribute to this very difficult labor I'm putting in right now, you can go to DylanBurns.tv, DylanBurns.tv, donate, sub, support the channel. I greatly appreciate it. Oh, by the way, I said that my article would release today. My publisher just slept through the release time. He promised me he would release it tomorrow. I'm going to be releasing an article with Offbeat Research tomorrow. Please do keep an eye out for it. The video from here on, we have a release week. It's going to be next week. We're going to release that next week. I forgot to drop that information, so might as well drop that now.
Is a rhino. Trump said that Ron DeSantis is a globalist. There is no evidence of that. In Ron DeSantis' time as governor, there's no evidence of anything like that. Now, that's a broad statement that you have to have a real pattern of behavior to prove that. To me, that was it. I was done with Trump. I couldn't do this. All the unforced errors, inviting Kanye, inviting your good friend Nick Fuentes, the white nationalist, to dinner, all the stuff associating with.
It's another lie. It's another lie.
Sure.
He said that President Trump invited Nick Fuentes. In reality, the dinner with President Trump, no. What happened is President
Nick Fuentes isn't your good friend?
That's not what I said.
Do you disavow? Well, tell me, do you disavow Nick Fuentes?
What happened?
I don't.
So
Yeah,
there's been a lot of
think that's
misinformation about the dinner. So what happened is the dinner was actually supposed to. It took place on November 25th, I believe. Okay, it was supposed to happen 2 months prior, but then something happened and they had to reschedule. And so originally it was.
Blue Rider of Neptune gave Bama's Rat a Tier 1 subscription. Dylan, you to get with Danbo after this and have he make a LOOMERED emote for chat.
We're not gonna make a Loomered emote. Actually, a big her face is very silly. Just her face going like, oh, would be pretty fun. I think you can call it the Loomered emote. I think that'd be funny. Yeah, maybe.
It was supposed to be a one-on-one dinner with Ye.
For those of you who don't know, Donald Trump had dinner with Nick Fuentes and Kanye West, where Kanye West basically asked Donald Trump to be his running mate in 2024 and pissed off Donald Trump. And apparently, according to Nick, Donald Trump was very complimentary towards Nick Fuentes.
And President Trump. And then Ye didn't tell President Trump or his staff that he was going to be bringing Nick and another individual with him. And he showed up to Mar-a-Lago. And then, President Trump had said, well, I guess if your friends are here, come in. And nobody knew, nobody had any advance information. His staff didn't know that Ye was going to be bringing other people. But President Trump, because he's a very hospitable person, as I saw firsthand this weekend when he invited me to, spend time with him at Bedminster, he just said, okay, have your friends come sit down with us. And one of the people there was Karen Giorno, who was one of his former state directors in 2016. And for full disclosure,
huge Bush supporter.
She had been one of my strategists for my campaign, which I have severely grown to regret. We don't work together anymore. We don't talk. And so he had thought, okay, well,
dude, Laura Loomer is like a walking drama machine. It feels like everything she touches becomes a scandal or like a drama or just some like interpersonal drama nonsense.
Just come down, sit and have dinner. And then ultimately, Karen was working with Milo and they leaked the details to the media. And Milo admitted to the press that he did it because he wanted. Milo
Yiannopoulos, the gay, now declaredly former gay guy who went on the Drunken Peasants and tried to defend priests diddling children because he was diddled by a priest, apparently. And then got canceled by the right and then came back and said, I'm no longer gay. I've been cured. And that's his new shtick. That's the guy she's talking about.
wanted to make Trump's life miserable and to get revenge on him. And one of the reasons why I don't work with Karen anymore, right, is because I'm very pro-Trump, and she seems to have all of this animosity towards him for some reason. And I believe that they teamed up to get revenge on Donald Trump. Nick was not invited by President Trump. And so when you say, oh, Trump invited Nick, no, Trump invited Ye, and Ye ended up bringing Nick along because Nick had flown to LA 2 days earlier. So it's important that we get the facts right.
And Trump said he had no idea who Nick Fuentes. How could Trump not know who Nick Fuentes was?
He said he didn't know who he was.
But
he said he doesn't know because there was no advanced introduction or preparation.
So you're right now, you're going to go on record disavowing Nick Fuentes, who said that he thinks that Hitler is effing cool?
Why do I have to disavow somebody? I'm a free speech absolutist.
I knew you wouldn't.
I'm a Jewish woman, and I have enough.
This is the thing. Again, she uses her Jewishness, and she does it every time. She uses her Jewishness to defend or divert from anti-Semitism. You know, it'd be easy. Let's say, like, even if someone was my friend, let's say Destiny said some crazy stuff, which she often does, and I had to disavow some statement. It wouldn't be difficult for me to do that. It wouldn't be difficult for me. And that's Destiny, not a white nationalist, Holocaust revisionist, Nick Fuentes. You can't use your Jewish identity to divert from like condemning anti-Semitism.
Integrity to fight for everybody's free speech rights, even people who make sometimes derogatory comments about Jews in Israel. I'm a free speech absolutist. I'm also very pro-Israel. I'm a self-identified Zionist, and the First Amendment applies to everybody. And we've already had rulings in this country.
You hang out with this guy. How about Ali Alexander, who was on the record?
What does that have anything to do with this?
But is this an argument with Trump, or are you guys mad at each other?
What?
Are we going to talk about Trump or DeSantis?
Are we going to talk about Trump or DeSantis? Exactly.
I'm going to her credibility.
No,
By the way, if we're going to talk about her being free speech absolutist, can we talk about the 2017 Caesar play? So there was a play in New York. They redid Caesar, like a play about Caesar. You know, the guy got stabbed and, you know, was the general. But they redid it, but it was basically the same play, but they redid it with modern characters. So Trump was Caesar, right? And at the end, Caesar gets assassinated. So Trump gets assassinated at the end. She responded to this by walking up on stage during the live performance after he was killed. By the way, they never explicitly say it's Donald Trump, but it's very clearly Donald Trump. She then yelled while being escorted off stage, "This is violence against Donald Trump. Stop the normalization of political violence against the right. This is unacceptable." The Public Theater responded by saying that they are champions of the First Amendment and the disruption was caused by social media. Alan Rosenberg of the Washington Post wrote that she did not believe Laura Loomer was genuinely offended by the play, but was looking for attention and to collect the $1,000 bounty that the alt-right social media personality Mike Cernovich had offered to anyone who disrupted the production. Brilliant.
Okay, but let's
this
go
is what
back
Bill's
to what I
going
was
to
saying.
do. I just want everybody to know. He's going to attack me because DeSantis doesn't have any policies. He knows that
DeSantis doesn't have any policies.
He doesn't have any policies. He's ripped everything.
This is about DeSantis versus Trump. Let's get back on track here.
Exactly. And so I want to talk. I'm here to talk about President Trump and his policies and why he's the better candidate. Okay. If you want to attack me, we can have our own space sometime, but we're not going to waste time so that you can, you know, try to paint me as some kind of radical.
Let's go back to
policies. Policies. Okay. Trump has said that he is going to, on day one in the Ukraine conflict, with a phone call. Impossible. It's not going to happen. I guarantee you that
It's true.
Putin and Zelensky are laughing in his face when he says that. He says on day one, I'm going to end birthright citizenship with an executive order.
True. Can't do that.
Again, impossible. Would never survive the courts.
Completely unconstitutional.
He said that I'm going to drain the swamp in 6 months. Again, he was the chief recruiter for the swamp for
John Bolton, Rex Tillerson, the list goes on. Rich, I think it was Elliott, Rich Elliott, I forget his name, but he was involved in the Contra affair. I believe he was supposed to manage the administration's policy on Venezuela. I mean, like, he covered himself in the swamp.
4 years. It will not happen. He had a chance to lock Hillary up. He promised that on his campaign I was so many rallies.
Can I also just say, really funny that the lock her up chance, you know, all of a sudden, you know, now that it's been turned around and it's a lock him up chant, he's very upset, you know, how the turns have tabled, as it were.
lock her up. He's, yeah. And 2 weeks after he became the president-elect, he goes in front of a crowd and he says, listen, I didn't mean that. We're really not going to do that. And then the whole Russiagate thing happened. I'm like, that never would have happened if you had locked her up. You emboldened the left.
Russiagate wouldn't have happened if she had arrested Hillary Clinton. His critique of Donald Trump is that he should have arrested Hillary Clinton. For what crime? What would the crime that they would bring forward against Hillary? I would love to hear it.
By not locking Hillary up.
The Benghazi thing fell through. The emails fell through. What would they follow through with?
They realized you're a paper tiger. You're all talk. You're not going to get these things done. And so they came after your jugular and look at all these problems. And
it's so interesting to, in like one sentence, like the idea of a presidential candidate being arrested or going after the president for crimes that they committed is so outrageous. But Bill Mitchell just casually suggests arresting Hillary Clinton for a nondescript crime, and, you know, not even an eye is batted. Like nobody's phased whatsoever.
Still seeing the long-term effects of that.
Let's start with that point right there. One of the big issues for me is which candidate is going to fire everybody. And I mean that figuratively to a certain degree. I do want everybody fired. I want reviews. I want the bureaucratic state to be curtailed to a great degree. I don't literally think someone's going to come in, bang a gavel, and everyone's gone.
Vivek Ramaswamy says he wants to fire 95% of all bureaucrats. I feel like all this is going to do is make it so that the country is run like a fledgling tech startup, where you're just like, I don't know, clean slate, boop. And that's fine if it's just like you're throwing away some spending money. That's not fine when you're taking a gigantic risk on the entire country full of over 300 million people that manages, Social Security and savings and the budget.
But the question then is, who would actually do that? Is it going to be Trump or is it going to be DeSantis?
The question is,
that guy who managed what was it, Sam Bankman-Fried or whatever? That dude who was extremely wealthy and mismanaged FTX into the ground and did some really bad stuff with them and how he handled the money. There are people like that all up and down Silicon Valley. All up and down. Probably a lot of them are compatriots of Vivek Ramaswamy. I have a weird feeling that if he had his way, there'd be a lot of people like that getting appointed to, like, the IRS.
The way you could do that is, here's the biggest problem. The reason why they call the deep state is the deep state. It's these people that carry on from one administration to the next that are employees. And it's very hard to get rid of them because if you try to fire somebody, then they appeal, and that takes many years, and they appeal again. So they can outlast any president, right? So what Trump had proposed earlier was this Schedule F idea, right? And he, through an executive order, where he would be able to, if anybody of these government employees could be proven to be involved in anything politically, then they could be fired. The problem is that the courts will fight this. This will be challenged over and over again. It's going to end up in the Supreme Court, probably take years and years. Trump only has 4 years in there to do that. So I think that Governor DeSantis would also follow something along those lines. But Trump wants to build a big, better facility. I believe it's for the FBI in D.C. DeSantis wants to move them out, literally drain the swamp by draining the swamp, moving people out of D.C., getting them out of the 3 martini lunches, getting them out of that, whole thing. So I think DeSantis has got a more pragmatic approach to that. He says, listen, it's going to take me 8 years to do this. You can't just drain the swamp in 6 months. And, it's not like Trump doesn't have a track record on this. Trump has got a track record on that.
Okay. So he says that DeSantis wants to, take these swamp monsters and deep state agencies out of D.C. DeSantis has brought the swamp.
Let me be clear, by the way. I don't think either of them want to clear the swamp. I just think they want their own swamp. I just think they just want to be like the biggest alligator in the swamp.
To Florida. Do you know that?
And you can look at Trump's record from his time in the administration. I think that was clear. The type of cronyism that was participated in during his administration. A lot of the swampy people that they had hired. You can just look at the people that Ron DeSantis is hiring now, or he hired when he was in Florida. Swamp people. I mean,
Ron DeSantis allowed for the Capitol Police to actually set up an official office in Tampa, Florida, for the purpose of hunting down Trump supporters who attended the rally on J6.
Sorry.
Florida has the highest number of J6 defendants. You can look it up. There was a report, I believe,
that's really unintentionally funny.
In the Tampa Bay Times about this. And so how exactly
that checks though. Florida having the highest number of J6 defendants. Yeah, that tracks. I think that tracks pretty close. Yeah.
Ron DeSantis going to dismantle these agencies when he's bringing them to Florida to harass and intimidate and carry out their weaponized agenda against Trump supporters? And they have a coalition where the Capitol Police in Tampa, Florida are working in conjunction with the FBI and the local sheriffs in Florida, some of whom were even endorsed by Ron DeSantis, and they are hunting down Trump supporters to this day. I live in Central Florida, and one of the districts that's close by to me, it was previously in my district before DeSantis took it out, right? Because it was one of the more pro-Trump areas, and he didn't want me having a super pro-Trump area when I was running for Congress against total rhino Dan Webster. You know, Citrus County, just a couple months ago, there was a January 6er who didn't even go inside the Capitol. Okay. He was just there. He was wearing a panda suit, walking around trying to talk about peace. And he had his home raided by the FBI in conjunction with the Citrus County Sheriff's Office, and they beat him. And that happened under Ron DeSantis's watch. There are videos, and we can play them here.
To be clear, like, I just do want to say, that is pretty fucked up, man. Pandas are endangered.
Today, I've done an extensive report about this of January 6 defendants. As I said, Florida has the highest number at any state in the country, begging Ron DeSantis for assistance, asking him to intervene about this weaponized government. But he has emboldened the Capitol Police and the January 6 Commission to come into Florida under his watch with his approval in Tampa to hunt down Trump supporters. So I take issue with what you said.
We had the Tampa Bay Times. I remember the story. It's a big deal. The Tampa Bay Times says U.S. Capitol Police plan to open a Tampa office. Why? It's the first step towards geographic expansion of the notoriously opaque agency, which has been in turmoil since January 6th. Tampa Bay Times is not a conservative publication by any stretch of the imagination. That is a really good point, because I've talked about one of the strongest things DeSantis could do, and he did this to a certain degree, is say, I will not assist in the extradition of Donald Trump on these indictments. But this right here, actually, I think is a bit alarming, considering, I mean, the photos that have come out of...
I wonder, like, is the position of the right that everybody who did anything that day, like, no matter if you, like, bashed in, like a police officer's skull or anything, they should just, like, all be scot-free? Like, you can storm the Capitol and try to steal the election. Like, that's just, like, all fine. That's perfectly fine. Our system can be battered as much as possible. How is that not just encouraging people to subvert our democracy again in the future? How is that not just saying, like, you can literally overthrow the government? You can overthrow our democracy. It's fine. No repercussions.
Let's talk about January 6th. Okay, my problem with Trump is the constant drama, the constant unforced errors. Mar-a-Lago, unforced error. If he had just given the documents back when they asked for them, none of this would happen. January 6th, he knew 5 days.
That's the thing that's crazy about the document scandal, is he took the documents, and the scandal isn't that he took the documents and then they got them back. The scandal is he took the documents, then they asked for them back, then he gave some of them back while continuing to hide other documents and pretending that he didn't have them, while consulting with his lawyers about how he can hide these documents and not return them, which eventually led to them raiding his home, including possibly documents that talked about invasion plans of Iran and nuclear secrets, like really high-level classification, and it being stored in a very unsafe location in a closet. Like, that is something that could have been completely avoided, not only at the end of his presidency, but they even gave him a chance to correct his mistake, and he just didn't want to.
Before January 6th, that Pence was not going to stop this certification. He knew that. He had requested National Guard troops. Why would he request National Guard troops unless he was afraid that there was going to be violence? He did not get the National Guard troops, and yet he sent his supporters to the Capitol, and he said, fight like hell. He had said earlier in his speech, protest.
Bill,
but
he said that picking a bit here.
He said earlier in the thing, peacefully protest, but then when they were going, he goes, fight like hell. If you don't fight like hell, you're going to lose your country. And I had said, leading up to this, I was advising people, don't go to this thing because they're going to have BLM there, they're going to have Antifa there, they're going to astroturf this thing. Trump, like he does so many times, he leads us right into the minefield. And I was using the example of Patton before. You know, Patton was kind of an obnoxious SOB. Trump can be an obnoxious SOB, so that's not disqualifying. But if Patton had constantly led his troops into ambushes where they got wiped out, he would not be a famous general. Trump constantly leads his own people into ambushes. If Trump had not had the January 6th where there was no end game, and this is Trump's problem, he never has an end game. Where there was no end game, there was no winning scenario on this, that if he had not led the people there, we would never have had these J6 defendants, and he could have preemptively pardoned all these people.
I disagree with this. I think Donald Trump had the right to contest the election. He gave a commonplace political speech.
He had a right to contest the election. He didn't have a right to illegally access voting data. He didn't have a right to push forward fraudulent documents, falsely asserting that the fake electors that their team had collected were the real electors after they had already lost their court cases. When you look at Al Gore, people talk and try to compare it to Al Gore. He pushed it, lost the court case, then had to drop it. Trump couldn't drop it. All the way up until the last day, he was still trying to get Mike Pence to overturn the results of the election. The accessing of the voting machines, illegal. The pushing of those fraudulent documents, illegal. I mean, come on, man. Like, he was preparing speeches about the election being rigged 4 days before the election even happened. He knew what he was getting into way before it happened. He knew what he was doing.
Says, widely the same kind of verbiage that Democrats use. I would say even less incendiary than most Democrats use.
It's just silly. Come on. This is so disconnected.
He had the right to be there and to press to the very end when the Electoral College slates were being submitted to.
He did not have a right to illegally access voting machines the same way he's accused the quote-unquote fraudulent actors of doing.
Pence, and I believe 141 Republicans had the right to pressure Pence into returning the alternate slates of electors to those states that are qualified to review those slates of electors. And that is something that has been, done in 1961, is done at previous times. You can review alternate slates of electors under the Electoral College Act before they changed it. So he had the right to be there and to make his case before the American people. And the original altercation at the gates happened before those Trump supporters could have made it all the way to the Capitol after he said, go peacefully, right, patriotically, because Ray Epps and his buddy Samsel were there coordinating apparently to pull.
He doesn't know. And the Ray Epps thing is there's nothing there. We have no confirmation he was some Fed agent coordinating everything. It's just all speculation.
Well, I personally think that
Trump, Trump, the important thing that you said earlier that doesn't really...
God, it's so disconnected from reality, man. When I watch shows like this, I doomer. I doomer because I think of so many people who really believe everything that's being said here. Man, at first I was like, oh, this is great, the right-wing infighting, but I'm like, God, man, these are the things that they argue about? Where's, like, childcare? Where's, like, childcare and stuff?
Important in my mind is that he did talk, according to the Department of Justice review, that he did notify the Pentagon, said that you're going to need at least 10,000 National Guard there. But if you go back and look at the testimony of Stephen Sund, you look at General Walker, the DC National Guard, they said because of optics and despite multiple warnings that happened days in advance, and I would argue the FBI knew months in advance that this was something that's going to happen. And if you go back to that infamous Time article, the Shadow Cabal had been planning this incitement narrative since May?
The Shadow Cabal? Is that the second level? There's the Cabal, and then there's the Shadow Cabal? What's the Shadow Cabal? Is that like the elite of the Cabal? I couldn't be more vague.
Of 2020. So they had been working to fortify this election up to that point, and they rigged it in multiple ways. And I argue
no, they didn't.
That Trump should have done more to prevent the rigging with these states, to try to get Bill Barr, who talk about drain the swamp, to go to these states and say you need to push the state attorneys generals to defend the state legislatures.
By the way, this is from the way I'm reading how this guy's talking, this is somebody who genuinely wanted the Democratic results of the election to be overturned. That's the only way I'm reading this guy. So at least one out of, and if I'm listening to Laura Loomer, probably half of the people on this podcast would be perfectly fine if they took democracy by the throat and just slit it. I'm just throwing that out there.
Rights, etc. Right. So my point is that in terms of the context of the shenanigans around the 2020 election, Trump was justified in making a speech and making his case and
He was not justified in illegally accessing the votes. He was not justified in knowingly, and we have good reason to believe he knowingly pushed the lie of the election being rigged. He was writing the speeches 4 days in advance, talking about if he loses, it was rigged, weeks in advance. A narrative that he's been pushing for much longer than even this, just this campaign cycle. He knew what he was doing.
politically pressuring Pence to do the right thing and to use whatever, power.
Again, do the right thing. Overturning the results of the Democratic election. The majority of states voted for Biden. He got the majority electoral votes. He won the majority of the popular vote. Wants to overturn that anyway. Why? Well, I mean, I assume he would say fraud. I assume he would say, it was stolen, even though there's no decent evidence of that. And even the Trump-appointed court judges that reviewed it could not find evidence of it. It just sounds like you can't take an L. And that's a bad trait in a democracy.
Powers that he could have that would be litigated. I think that's important context in a lot of this, that the recourse that Trump was seeking was through litigation. He wanted the Supreme Court to take up like the Texas case, which was mysteriously dropped because they had original jurisdiction. The context is he was seeking legal recourse. So Georgia's election indictment is a sham. He was seeking legal recourse because his end remedy was the courts. He wanted the courts to solve these problems.
And in fact, one of the interesting things to me about the indictment in Georgia is one of the furtherance of criminal conspiracy acts they present is that Trump said whatever legal means. Like they said he went to Brian Kemp and said, hey, let's figure this out by whatever legal means. I don't know the exact quote, but it was he said, I can't remember what it was. He said, hey, see if you can look into the fraud or get it done by whatever the legal mean is. Right. And they were like, that's a conspiracy criminal act to ask someone to legally go.
He gave the exact, I'm sorry, man. I don't know if, I feel like everybody just wants to give Trump as much wiggle room as possible and like give him the benefit of the doubt to an extreme extent, no matter what. He gave the exact amount of votes that he was losing by and said that was the amount of votes that they needed. And then said to the Secretary of State that if they wouldn't solve this issue, there would be great repercussions for them. That they would be facing great legal repercussions because they knew what they were doing was illegal. And ever since then, he's done nothing but lambast the people involved in managing the Georgia election, even endorsing the opposition candidates, trying to make them pay for not helping him to take that election.
After his lawyers is just psychotic.
I want to add too, people.
And it's not like his advisors weren't telling him, and there weren't people who could have told him if he wanted to ask more people that there was no evidence of widespread fraud. Georgian officials said that as well.
You want to blame Donald Trump for January 6th, and you said that he could have done more. Well, how come we're not talking about Nancy Pelosi calling off the National Guard? And we do know that it was Nancy Pelosi who told the National Guard to stand down. Okay, number one, I can go back and forth on Nancy Pelosi stuff. I think we've been on the J6 stuff a little bit too long, so I'm going to kind of just let it fly. But this is the diversion. They're talking about Trump versus Ron DeSantis. I don't know why they're talking about Nancy Pelosi. And they also...
I think you guys are missing the point of what I was saying.
Exactly right.
No, but we're not missing the point because...
No, you are missing the point. I can tell based on your argument, you're missing the point.
You're not putting
I don't think it wasn't Pelosi.
I don't think we actually know where the sound order came from.
We still don't have all the footage. Okay, that's one thing. Yeah. We would know more about this if Kevin McCarthy had actually released the footage like he said. We wouldn't have...
I don't know if we would. I actually don't know if we would. It would depend on what would be found of that footage.
So many January 6th political prisoners locked up. And I think that, people would have more sympathy for President Trump.
He could not have pardoned them.
I'm not sure if he...
You can do a preemptive pardon.
Yes, but who? A list of names. You've got 800 people on one side.
He could have done a blanket pardon of everybody.
He could have literally wrote, I pardon hereby everyone in D.C. outside of the Capitol is pardoned.
He shouldn't have. It would have been stupid, but I mean, I guess he could have tried to do it. Considering all the other crazy shit he tried to do, he could have. A lot of the J6 people who got arrested felt pretty abandoned by Trump.
I don't think they were.
I don't think that would.
A president can preemptively pardon.
But he's got to be able to say their names.
You're missing my point.
You can't just say like I hereby pardon all people.
Let me clarify my point. My point was, what was in Trump's mind? Was there a possibility of violence in Trump's mind? Was that something that could have happened? Well, he requested all these thousands of National Guard troops. You don't do that unless you think there's a possibility of violence. And so he knew there was a possibility of violence. And yet he had his people go there, and he said, go to the Capitol and protest and fight like hell, when he knew there was a possibility of violence and he did not have protection.
It's the most
and there was a permitted rally outside the Capitol. They had a permit for it.
But what I'm saying to you, what I'm saying to you is, Trump has got a very bad tendency of leading us into a minefield based upon his own hubris and his own narcissism.
The election is the right cause to take up, to fight, but the verbiage is not that incendiary.
But also, there was no way. Let me put it this way: the January 6th rally, there were 1,000 ways it could have gone south. There was no way it could have worked.
That's exactly the point, and you're sort of indirectly proving Trump's case. He did not send a bunch of unarmed redneck extremists into the Capitol to tore the building, or tore the U.S. government into submission. There was no capture and kill threat. In fact, the Congress had been originally shut down due to the pipe bomb threats at RNC and DNC. So the point is, there was no end game, and there was no collusion on the part of Trump with these extremists. He was the commander in chief. So he's not culpable for that.
It's an important point. It's an important point. Trump was still speaking when the first group breached the barricades and stormed onto the Capitol grounds.
Well, the people that were the peaceful protesters there January 6th, I do not think were the people that were breaking windows and causing trouble and beating the cops.
That's true.
I think it was the BLMs, the Antifas, all these AstroTurf people. I was warning people.
Dude, I'm sorry, man. I'm like, they're all delusional. I was probably the most left-wing person there in my Biden hoodie. I saw very few left-wing people there, unless I was the one all organizing it, man. Like, is it really that hard to believe that if you genuinely believe the election was stolen, that you could possibly get violent? For some people, that might be the only reasonable conclusion. If you're, Tree of Liberty, watered through the blood of tyrants. Is it really that crazy to think that if you believe the election was actually stolen, that you might get violent? Is that hard to understand? If I believe the election was stolen, I could see myself getting violent, like many other people. But the only problem was the election wasn't stolen, and it was a scam. That's what made that scam so dangerous.
I want to make a point.
2 weeks. I was warning people for 2 weeks before this thing happened.
Yeah.
Don't go to this thing. They're going to trap us. They're going to AstroTurf us. We're going to be blamed for this. They're going to have Antifa. They're going to have busloads of Antifa and busloads of BLM. They're going to create the violence. And I saw the videos of people breaking windows. These weren't Trump supporters. These were guys with long hair, black backpacks. They're wearing a.
I don't think there was a memo to the Antifa. There was actually coordination to tell them not to do that.
As far as I know, from what I was told before I went to J6, is that there was going to be no counter-protesting because all the local groups, all the local Antifa, all that stuff, that it was too dangerous to go, that they saw that this protest was going to be different.
AstroTurf, and I know that John Sullivan was there.
Well, were these regular Trump supporters that were causing this violence?
No, I think the FBI had plants inside of these far-right extremist groups, and much like the Whitmer kidnapping, had kind of pulled them along to go and not stop them from going to the Capitol. They could have tamped it down. They could have stopped, the Proud Boys and all of these groups from wanting to go to the Capitol, but instead they seem to aid and abet him. And you look at the police was crawling with undercover MPD. We know, the municipal police department, armed, by the way, some of them encouraging the Trump protesters, this is on video, by the way, to go to the Capitol. And on top of that, there was undercover FBI, and that's come out in trials too. And they didn't do anything to stop.
And Trump was going to be there.
I want to make a point.
Trump is let me make this final point. Trump is the king of unforced errors. He is like a blind man in a field full of garden rakes. He's always stepping in it, always walking.
This is true.
Into it, always causing himself trouble, whether it be J6, whether it be the Mar-a-Lago documents, whether it be...
Trump will commit another crime if he is elected president. In fact, I think there's a decent chance he might commit another crime before this election season is over. Like intimidating witnesses, which is something that he's on the edge of doing right now on social media. And he got explicitly warned by a judge not to do.
in
I think he was too
Georgia.
nice.
I
all
think he
these
did
sort
the
of
right
things.
thing on J6 because he
You're
didn't
gonna
allow
jump in,
him to
yes.
get.
I wanna-
Was he supposed to allow them to steamroll him?
I want
don't think so. Not my
I
opinion.
want to fact check another one of Bill's lies. So Bill said just now that President Trump could have done a blanket pardon of all the J6ers. That is categorically false. As you know, President Trump was in
I don't even know if he could get away with it, but I find it strange that he didn't even attempt to pardon any of them. He didn't try to pardon all of them. He didn't try to pardon a single one of them. If he wanted to, he could have, at that point, by the time he left office, some of them were known.
impeached on January 13th of 2021. Okay, they tried to charge him with an incitement of an insurrection. I brought notes to this because I knew you were going to say this. Okay, and ultimately, President Trump's term, as we know, ended on January 20th of 2021, and that's when the transition of power took place. President Trump was not acquitted until February 13th, 2021, by the Senate. The reason why President Trump wouldn't have been able to issue just a broad brush pardon of anyone connected to January 6th is because, and I'll read this directly, under Article 2, Section 2 of the United States Constitution, it states that there is an exception to the presidential power to pardon in cases of impeachment. The presidential pardon power does not extend to forgiving crimes and misdemeanors that the House might charge in a bill of impeachment. And they tried to
When did the
impeachment,
impeachment? When was the day of the
incitement of
impeachment?
insurrection. The day of the impeachment was 1 week after January 6th.
Hey, somebody just redeemed Ask for Subs. It's not easy to suffer through this and to give even the tiny bits of commentary that I am giving. As a young man, I value my brain very much and would like it to not be full of tumors. But due to the risk that getting tumors, this video produces a real risk of getting tumors, I'd appreciate any help with my medical expenses by going to DylanBurns.tv, DylanBurns.tv, donating, subscribing, maybe gifting some subs, and supporting the channel. Maybe if you've got a Prime sub, dropping it on Twitch, or going to the Patreon to support the channel. Bunch of different ways. And if you're on YouTube, you can always become a channel member. Thank you very much for the 100 bits. Who gave me the 100 bits? Mr. Magamoto. You could probably do it like how there was a blanket pardon on the South after the Civil War. I think that might be different. I would have to remember how the pardon for Southern soldiers went during the Civil War.
Which was January 13th, 2021, and Trump officially left office on January 20th.
And so we had an entire week to pardon them.
But I'm sorry. I do not see a
you
reasonable
said,
scenario.
You said that he could have, and he couldn't. I'm fact checking.
He could have. He couldn't have. Anytime
He
after
couldn't have.
January
No, he
6th,
couldn't have.
You'd have to pardon
He was
everybody in the country.
He was
No, no,
completely
right.
deplatformed
Can't
2
just do
days
that.
after January 6th. He was debanked. He was shut down. Okay. He was silenced.
Let's think about this reasonably. First, we need a legal constitutional scholar to answer the question, can Trump sign a document saying, I hereby pardon all people within a 2-mile radius of the Capitol on this date? I don't think that's possible. The next thing is Trump would have to figure out who was actually a violent rioter and who was a peaceful, bumbling dotard who didn't know what was going on. So he's got a week, and they didn't even charge some of these people yet. So this is the issue.
You don't have to be charged with pardon.
And so Trump.
Okay, so they don't want to pardon everyone. They just want to pardon certain people. So they just want to pardon the people who just kind of like wandered into the Capitol building. They just kind of stumbled past those multiple broken through police lines into the Capitol building. But they don't want to, they're fine with them going after the violent people.
Needs the name of someone who was not charged of the 250,000 people in D.C. It's not possible.
But that's the reason why they impeached him just days after January 6th, because they knew this, right? The section of the Constitution that I just read to you, and they knew, okay, well, President Trump still has about 2 weeks or so to pardon people if he wishes, but by trying to impeach him for the incitement of an insurrection, it basically ended his ability to pardon anybody associated with what he was being impeached for.
Let's shift gears to the
No,
250 million.
you wanted to shift gears because I'm proving you wrong. Because I'm proving you wrong. You just said something that was completely infactual.
I disagree.
So we can move
I disagree
on.
with you.
We should talk about it, but it's just this like flippant narcissism of every single time that Laura fact checks me in real time and I get proven to just be, an anti-Trump hater, I'm just going to change the subject.
Well, let's leave it for the viewers
But let's shift gears. Let's shift gears to the $250 million that Trump falsely raised. He raised, after the election, he raised $250 million to create a fund to fight this steal. $250 million. instead of, and he did not create this fund never existed. As a matter of fact, under testimony, Trump's own marketing people said this was just a marketing ploy. This fund never existed. He transferred all $250 million to his leadership PAC. That money ended up going to all kinds of things that had nothing to do with J6. He did not pay the legal bills of people that were in jail for J6. Who he did pay the legal bills for were people that were going before Congress to testify about J6. He paid their bills because he didn't want them to turn state's evidence against him. And then we know that Rudy Giuliani, who did all that work for Trump, traveling around the country, that Trump has stiffed him on the legal bills. He was supposed to pay Rudy Giuliani $20,000 a day. All he did was pay his travel expenses. And just recently, Rudy Giuliani was at Mar-a-Lago begging to get his legal bills paid. He didn't pay them. Well, also, it just turns out
the RNC paid some of Giuliani's.
Coincidentally, shortly after Trump got this $250 million, his jet, which has been in mothballs for 2 years, gets a new coat of paint and some gold-plated toilet seats.
Look, if Trump says he's going to raise money for fighting the steal or whatever, and then he uses that for legal fees for J6 witnesses, that sounds like he's spending the money on exactly what he should be spending the money on.
He didn't use it.
You just said that.
I said that no.
Tim didn't listen to a single word he said, man.
For the people that were in jail, he didn't spend anything for their
right. But you said he
didn't help to support their families.
He said he paid the legal bills.
That's not true.
He put the money in his leadership PAC and then spent some of the money on the legal bills of his cronies, not the people who are actually there on J6. Now, I don't know if the legal bills to protect his cronies is fighting against the steal or just fighting to save the ass of your compatriots who you want to stay above water so they don't flip against you. Not to mention, why is the money going towards the leadership PAC?
President Trump has had multiple events, and in fact, I was invited to one. He's going to be having several of the January 6ers and their families.
Where did the $250 million go?
But you just said that he's not supporting the families or the victims.
Okay, so she's going to pivot away from that.
January 6th. On the 22nd of this month at Bedminster, I was invited to attend. I don't know if I'm going because I also am going to go to Georgia for the arraignment and cover that live. President Trump is going to be hosting a group that is supporting and providing money for lawyers to provide legal representation to
so
January 6ers.
Getting more donations in
and
to do something that he should have done for 2 years.
He also did his song Justice for All, which made it to #1 on, I guess, the Billboard charts and also Apple Music charts. And he said that he was donating all of the proceeds
about
from that song. I think it was a lot more than that to the families of J6 victims. He's hosted them at Mar-a-Lago numerous times.
Why is this?
Dude, I love how they say to J6 victims, and they're not talking about the locals. They're not talking about the cops that got beaten and are injured. Many of them with permanent injuries are going to be living for the rest of their lives. They're talking about the people who did the beating.
Even necessary. Where did the $250 million go? I mean, $100 and something thousand for Melania's hair, paying bills for his hotel.
What should he do with the $250 million?
Well, there's the reports that there's FEC reports that show that President Trump has spent at least over $40 million on legal fees. So you're acting like he just pocketed $250 million. OK, and you're also failing to mention that, there can't be coordination between campaigns and super PACs. And a lot of the money that was raised by the super PACs.
Why hasn't Donald Trump paid Rudy Giuliani's legal fees where Rudy Giuliani's in deep trouble. Rudy Giuliani was
there was an agreement at the beginning. The RNC was paying for some of RNC was paying for a lot of the legal fees until the presidential primary took place.
I'm sorry, who cares?
Trump stole $250 million. No, he stole $250 million. That is without.
Ron DeSantis stole $200 million. He raised $200 million when he ran for governor of Florida, and those donations came from Trump supporters who thought that they were donating to Ron DeSantis. He broke records when it came to gubernatorial fundraising.
And he won by 20 points.
And he raised $200 million.
He won by 20 points.
How you were losing. But now he's polling low.
Money. Let me finish and explain to you. He stole $200 million from Trump supporters because he lied to them and said, donate to me. I'm going to serve another 4 years as your governor. He lied to high dollar donors who wrote enormous checks of, 100,000, 500,000, millions, like Ken Griffin, for example, who just got exposed yesterday in an article for literally quid pro quo.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about.
That's really what they're going to compare stealing to. I'm sorry, taking $250,000 to say you're going to spend it on one thing and then you send it to a completely different thing is not comparable to somebody raising money for a gubernatorial race, running for governor, winning by 20 points, and then 2 years later running for president because he sees an opportunity. He should have probably saw his term out before he ran for anything, but that isn't the same. It's not comparable.
By the way,
These people gave millions of dollars to this committee while knowing that Ron DeSantis was, running for governor. And then what did he do after the gubernatorial race ended? He then had the funds transferred to the Never Back Down super PAC, $82.5 million.
Right.
And then $1 million transferred to a PAC that was created just days after the Florida Speaker of the House, Paul Renner, changed the Florida Resign to Run law as a form of bribery.
So let me say.
So he stole money from Trump supporters.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he stole. He stole at least $82.5 million.
This is just like moral grandstanding. He brought up $250 million that were transferred to a political PAC that didn't have to do with stopping the steal. And your response is, well, he raised money for his political campaign and he didn't stay in the governor's mansion because he's running for president, so therefore he stole that money. That's not. I mean, that's pretty silly. So are we saying that everybody who doesn't finish their term in office and runs for president while in the middle of their term is stealing money? Is that stealing money? Because I remember on the campaign I remember during the debates, during the Florida debates, he was asked if he would see the term through, and he didn't answer it. He wouldn't answer the question. I thought he dodged it. And this is why I thought he dodged it, because I thought he wanted to run for president.
If you go to a Trump supporter,
he stole that money.
You're deflecting.
And if Donald Trump says, I would like you to give me money, don't ask why. They're going to give him money. If Trump says, trust me, I'm working on some important things, they're going to help me, people would give him money. It doesn't matter.
This is the stupidest thing. Trump can lie about what he's going to use the money for because people are going to give him money anyway because of the cult. The worst defense of Trump you could possibly make. Like, Trump's all powerful. Does it matter if he lies?
Trump supporters are happy believing that Trump is going to do whatever he needs to do with the funds. However, I do think there's an issue if Ron DeSantis is saying, I'm running for governor, not president, donate to me. And then
No, that's fucking hilarious. Trump, if he lies about it, his supporters don't care, so it's whatever. But DeSantis saying he's going to run for governor, taking money, and then using that money to win, but then running for president later, no, that's lying. That's deceitful. That's wrong. The bending backwards, man, he should become a gymnast. He needs to be doing flips and pinwheels.
then transfer his money so he can run against Trump. That feels kind of shady.
Trump specifically said, this money is for this fund. And he named the fund. And then we have under testimony, the fund never existed. That was a lie. He raised money for a fund. As a matter of fact, I would not be surprised.
What does that mean?
I would not be surprised.
What does that mean? He raised the money, so the fund existed.
No. There was a fund that they were going to create that was just going to be specifically to fight the steal. It was, I think, election integrity fund. I can't remember the name of it just off the top of my head, but it was a fund. And his own marketing people said that was just a marketing ploy. It never existed. They transferred the money to his leadership PAC. And people don't understand. A leadership PAC and a super PAC are two different things. A leadership PAC can spend money on whatever. They can spend money on Trump to do golf trips, anything. It's not like a super PAC, okay? So he transferred the money to these guys, and then God only knows where the money went. We know for a fact that they paid over $100,000 for Melania's hair to be done. We know that money went to Trump's businesses and his hotels.
Just like we know that over $400,000 of Ron DeSantis.
She's just pivoting. It's just a pivot.
His presidential donations just went to pay off his personal American Express card. So if you look at the financial disclosure forms, and I did an extensive.
Your candidate's corrupt. My candidate's corrupt. I guess we're gotta vote for Chris Christie.
To report on this, there are American
This whole debate is kind of a Chris Christie ad.
Express credit card payments that are not properly documented according to the rules as they're supposed to be documented in an official report. So you want to talk about Melania? What did Ron DeSantis spend?
It's all just like, I understand appeal to hypocrisy is like rhetorically powerful, but intellectually it's very weak because it doesn't defend your candidate from anything. At best, that means both your candidates suck equally.
I want to talk about Jill DeSantis' trips to Gucci with their campaign American Express card. Let's talk about that.
Let's shift
it's
a little.
Jill.
We'll shift a little bit because otherwise we're just going back and forth on the money, and
Right.
Kyle wanted
Yeah,
to jump in.
so I think that, you know, we could say that both of them have moved the money away in ways that some of the original donors disagree with. I think that we can say that because, you know, politics, you know, the circumstances have changed for both DeSantis and for Trump. You know, we don't know exactly what triggered DeSantis' decision. He may see trouble ahead for Donald Trump ultimately becoming president and cares about America enough to want to come forward
Trump
and
can't
run for the country. So that may be Ron DeSantis' rationale. You know, I will leave it to Ron DeSantis to, you know, explain that. But I want to explain why I supported Ron DeSantis originally leading into this debate with Laura. And, you know, everything changed when these political indictments started coming down the line. Every time there was a Biden scandal, there was a political prosecution. And, you know, you go back to August with the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago, we saw that Biden had a classified document issue come up in November, just prior to the midterm elections. He covered that up completely. That is a blatant cover up. Nobody talks about it. That came out. Biden still hasn't been indicted for this, and there's no.
But he's a sitting president. He can't be indicted.
Well, there's a special counsel who's supposedly investigating this. There's no headway. It's just, you know, radio silence. Yeah, exactly. That's true. Exactly. So there's radio silence on all of that stuff, and every time starting in, you know, late March. All the way up until August, even with the Georgia indictment, you know, last week, there's just been Biden scandal, Trump prosecution, or, you know, Trump indictment over and over and over again. So
does he think that all these like different DAs and different jurisdictions that are charging Trump are like timing it for Biden scandals? And I don't even think it's that timed for Biden's scandals. It's just that they are constantly talking about Biden and constantly attacking Biden. And so anytime there would be any charge against Trump, it would be timed to something they were complaining about Biden. If they would have charged Trump like immediately after he did the crimes, it would have been like, it was too quick, too fast. You should have waited longer until you had all the evidence. You wait longer. Oh, now the campaign season's coming around. Now all of a sudden Trump has charges. It was always going to be a problem with how Trump was charged. There's no good way to do it for his supporters because Trump being charged is inherently the problem.
My point is that if we were all thinking about how the Democrats were going to rig the election like they did in 2020 with like the COVID,
guys, they really they rigged the election. It's just no hold bar. They rigged it. The entire, like, a good 33 to 60% of the Republican Party is just full of sore losers who just can't accept it. And the longer they don't accept it, it's worse for our democracy, but it's better for Joe, because if they can't accept that they lost, then how are they going to know how to change the things necessary to make them win?
With the mass mail-in ballots and the Zuckerberg boxes and all this stuff, they're rigging it right now in front of our faces. That's my viewpoint. This is election interference. This is rigging the election.
Let me ask you a question.
And so,
and you know what that means is that when Trump loses again, it's going to be the same thing, except not even accept anything. It's just going to be the same thing. Oh, it was rigged again. Trump should be the real winner. Challenge the election. Access the voting machines illegally.
Just really briefly, Bill.
Mm-hmm.
So my point is that if you know, the situation has changed, and on August 1st, DeSantis came forward, put this mealy-mouthed statement, just like he had said in North Carolina rallies and so on, you know, very lukewarm sort of, I'm going to drain the swamp, you know, and he's even said stronger things recently, like, you know, this wouldn't have happened to Donald Trump if he would have drained the swamp, etc. This really aligns him more with the GOP establishment that I'm comfortable with, because the thing about Donald Trump that is really highlighted to me, not just the deep-seated corruption and vindictiveness and nastiness of these deep state actors, is that the GOP establishment is not stepping up to do any meaningful actions to defend Donald Trump. They are sitting back and they're on vacation. They're giving these little statements. Oh, we're going to investigate this. We're going to investigate that.
These strongly worded letters are very.
I take it back. The Democrats are very. Just a second, Bill.
Okay.
I'll get to the end point and I'll set you up. Okay. So my point is they're rigging the election right now in front of our faces. And if we don't support Donald Trump, then they're going to continue to select our candidates from every election from now to the end of time. We need to punish the Democrats, or alternative scenario, bring them out of the the hiding, out of the shadows, and expose the democracy of America as a sham.
Democracy.
Let's peel the Band-Aid off. Let's see how nasty these actors in DC are, and let's let the American people, who are, some of them are still asleep, see just how much of a complete illusion our process is. Donald Trump is the first candidate since, I would argue, Reagan versus H.W. Bush, to be not the GOP establishment pick. And I think like when he won, and he shocked them and Hillary Clinton, who had tried to rig that election as well with the...
Dude, every election, 2016 rigged, 2020 rigged, 2024 rigged. Every election is rigged against us. We're victims. We're the constant victims. Constantly. Everyone's against us all the time. We never win, except that time in 2016 when the election was rigged, but we still won. Which, I mean, we were just so good and so powerful that we beat the rigging even though we lost the popular vote. Come on, get the fuck out of here.
Steele dossier.
I don't even think he believes it.
Etc. He really we saw big tech mobilize.
Right.
We saw this endless lawfare mobilize now. For me, it's really proven me right in my argument for the last 15 years that people like Barack Obama and his advisors, John Brennan, who was a communist before he was a CIA director, they have a plan to undo freedom in this country.
Yeah.
Dog, you're like, look, I believe the candidate that lost should have overturned the election and stayed president, no matter if he lost. And the reason I believe that our democracy should be overturned is because our enemies want to hurt freedom. We need to end freedom to save freedom. War is peace. Freedom is slavery.
And Donald Trump understands this, and he's more vocal about it. I did believe Ron DeSantis was Trumpism without the drama for a lot of it, and I believe he had better bureaucratic skills to excise a lot of these bad actors out of our government. Yeah. I think that's true, and I heard your counter argument, Laura, and I agree that
Trump is going to excise bad actors.
What you said was disturbing.
What
did he do for 4 years?
Policies are totally different, right? That's what I said in the very beginning about him being this Manchurian candidate, and I agree with what you said. Where's the Republican Party on this? They're just completely MIA on vacation. And I will say, you're always saying, oh, you never criticize President Trump. One thing that I was very critical of President Trump over, and I'm his biggest supporter, is his endorsement of Kevin McCarthy.
Yo, by the way, doesn't Tim Pool consider himself a moderate? Wouldn't the moderate thing to do here come in and be like, yo, actually that election wasn't rigged, or actually, maybe we shouldn't say Trump is the best president. Can we talk about these other presidents that might be better? Where's the moderate part of Tim Pool that enters the conversation? Can anybody pin down the moderate part of him for me?
McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy is just sitting back, allowing for this weaponization of government to happen. He's done absolutely nothing except issue this milquetoast statement, and he's actually supporting Ron DeSantis. I call out Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the reason why she calls me crazy, and the reason why she
a lot of people call you crazy.
I don't care. It's, as President Trump always says, it's the outsiders who change the world, and I'm an outsider, and I'm proud of it. I don't want to be a part of their club in the GOP establishment, And so the fact of the matter is she has formed an alliance with Kevin McCarthy. And I have exposed the fact that Kevin McCarthy is anti-Trump, and that's a threat to her because she has falsely presented herself. No, but this is important, Tim, as an ally to President Trump. Kevin McCarthy has refused to endorse President Trump for Congress or for president. Okay,
nobody's endorsing him.
He has come out. No, the entire Florida congressional delegation endorsed Donald Trump. What are you talking about?
How many of us former cabinet members? How many of us
I got to make a point about
how many former chiefs of staff endorsed him?
I broke a story a couple of months ago about how Kevin McCarthy was actually directing his donors in the Central Valley and Silicon Valley in California to host high-dollar fundraisers for Ron DeSantis, and it was actually at one of these fundraisers where Ron DeSantis said that he was against President Trump's policies with China, particularly as it relates to tariffs, and that he doesn't support tariffs. And we now know that he doesn't support tariffs because all of his biggest donors are, people tied to Sequoia.
Dude, I will never understand. On one hand, we can't send aid to Ukraine because it'd be too expensive and it'd hurt everyday people, even though much of the aid we're spending is replenishing our own stockpiles with modern equipment while sending over old equipment we can't convert into cash anyway. While sanctioning the Chinese economy is going to have a more direct effect on American consumers' everyday life than spending the 0.3% on GDP on replenishing her own stockpiles and sending over old gear. And somehow that's fine, and there's no question of that. In fact, that's the patriotic thing to do. But sending over weapons to Ukraine, oh no, that's not putting America first.
Doug Leone, Ken Griffin, who
Anybody remember how the Trump sanctions on aluminum and steel, how that undercut any American factory that had to produce cans, like soda producers or anything like that? How did the Trump tariffs on China end up working?
Was billionaire because of his investments and his business dealings in China. We now know from a report that came out yesterday, of course, that he was working with Ken Griffin to modify this law that he said was going to ban Chinese nationals from purchasing land. And now we know that Ken Griffin was able to just donate $5 million to him and completely change that.
I want
to make one point on Congress.
Though, is that we need to start calling them out. Where are the Republicans in Congress? I'm calling on Marjorie Taylor Greene to issue a motion to vacate. We need a Speaker of the House that's actually going to stand up for President Trump and stand by him instead of working with state GOPs like Kevin McCarthy just did in California, where he worked with Jessica Patterson, even though he denies it, to have, this delegate heist. And if it wasn't for me, they probably would have stolen the nomination.
Yeah, I'm going to get a chance to actually talk again here because I've been sitting here for about 10 minutes without saying anything.
We need to call out Kevin McCarthy and House leadership.
All right, so let me make a point I want to bring up. Mike Cernovich tweeted that right now the Republicans control Congress with a comparable margin that Nancy Pelosi did. The question is, why aren't they doing anywhere near what Pelosi had done?
Because the Democrats controlled the presidency, the Senate, and the House. Republicans only control the House. Democrats control the Senate and the executive branch. They would have to pass stuff with a decent amount of Democrats in order for it to be veto-proof, and they would still have to get it through the Senate, which they can't. That's why.
Yeah, let's talk about Mar-a-Lago, for instance. Okay, and Trump says, well, I'm protected by the Presidential Record Act, which obviously means that he doesn't understand how any of this works. What the Presidential Record Act says is that the sitting president, is required to keep personal and presidential records separate. When he leaves office, the presidential records...
Reminder that Trump increased the penalty for the Presidential Records Act in reaction to Hillary Clinton. Just want to throw that out there.
Become the sole property of the National Archives. He can take his personal records home. What Trump is saying is, anything I take with me becomes my personal record. That is incorrect. Also, if it comes to national defense information documents like the Iran war plan, okay, those cannot be...
He wasn't indicted for that, though, right?
Yes, he was. In superseding indictment, yes, he was.
A superseding indictment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So with the Iran war plans, these are... it doesn't matter whether they are declassified or not. He cannot take these out of the secure facility where they were in the government's property, take them home, and he cannot show them to people like Susan Wiles, who is a consultant for the Chinese.
That's not true. That is not true.
Oh, her consulting firm doesn't do work with the Chinese?
Susie Wiles only consults for American companies, and she's affiliated with a lobbying firm. She's not responsible for every single client that they take on.
Regardless, she is not authorized to see these documents.
You said regardless. You just lied about her. So you should correct the record. You just lied about her.
Okay,
she doesn't represent foreign nationals.
You're going on the record saying she has nothing to do with the Chinese.
She herself, from my understanding and my knowledge, is not direct.
What the fuck? Do either of them know? So she's like, she doesn't do work with the Chinese. Well, I thought she did work with the Chinese. Well, from my knowledge, it was like, okay, so neither of you know.
Directly involved with the Chinese.
Okay, I've read about 10 articles to the contrary. But anyway, but she is not authorized to see these documents. And Trump went on Brett Baier and looked us in the eye and he said, I've never seen this document. I've never heard of this document. I don't know what this is. I never would have had General Milley do this. And he lied to our faces like he's done so many times before.
He's innocent until proven guilty.
And then he's on the record.
We don't have proof of that. Like, he's not been convicted.
How does he need to not be? We know the document because we have audio of him talking about the document to her face. So I'm saying he doesn't know about the document's a lie because we have audio of him talking about the document. We don't need a court case to tell us that he's lying if we have the audio proving that he's lying. We don't need to wait for the court case. If I said, guys, I've never worn a shirt with a cat on it, and then you guys said, Dylan, you're wearing a shirt with a cat on it right now, you wouldn't need to take me to court to prove anything. You've got the evidence. It's right there.
Indicted him
and
for this because they've got evidence that this was what they did. That it wasn't just a real estate, plan that he was waving around.
No,
this was actually the Iran.
Like if we're looking at any one of these indictments, these are novel legal theories. By all means, I'll say.
How are these not? The Espionage Act is not a novel
No. There's
theory.
a lot of charges brought against Trump that are novel legal theories about what is free speech, if we look at Georgia in particular. But my point is simply, just because a weaponized DOJ says Trump is hereby indicted does not mean Trump lied
Weaponized DOJ.
or is guilty of any crime.
Okay.
There's more special counsel investigations into Hunter Biden than there is Donald Trump.
In the DOJ, Trump could have given all those documents back right away. But the problem that he had was not only did he not give them back, but when they were under subpoena, he had that one guy, I can't pronounce his last name, move the documents around. And then he said to his lawyers, okay, go back to these guys and say, hey, you've got all the documents. He had his lawyers lie for him. And that's why the lawyer...
President Trump is protected by the Presidential Records Act.
It was a process crime trap. That's my view of
more
it.
importantly,
he's protected by the Presidential Records Act.
Outside of any
I think she's just yelling that. I don't even think she knows what the Presidential Records Act is. I think she's just yelling it. You guys ever see that scene in The Office where what's his name? Scott? What's the main guy? The main guy in The Office. He kind of is in charge of the office. What's his name? Phil. His name. Somebody remember me. Michael Scott. Remember when Michael Scott just yells, "I declare bankruptcy"? I think that's what she just tried to do with the Presidential Records Act.
You don't even understand what the Presidential Records
That's actually how Trump thinks it works, though.
Act is.
You are citing.
Yes, I do.
You are citing
Yes, I do.
DOJ indictments, not convictions or hard evidence of proof.
How is he protected by the Presidential
They've
Records
made
Act?
accusations against Trump for which he's been indicted. He has not proven to do anything you've claimed he's done.
Wait, how are they gonna be so indignant about they haven't convicted him or anything, they haven't gotten him guilty on anything, but on the other hand, while saying, well, the case isn't over, you're objecting to the case in and of itself. Wouldn't you also say for that you should wait till the case will be over and you've been presented all the evidence until you come to your conclusion about if the case should be happening in the first place?
Right, he's been indicted for these things. Okay.
And that doesn't mean anything. Okay. I mean, look, when they claim that Jenna Ellis...
the documents back, this is
No,
Trump's problem.
Look.
Trump's problem is he knows the left is out to get him. He knows they're very sneaky, okay? And yet he walks around with a target on his back all the time, constantly stepping into these bear traps. I'm sick and tired of that. As one of Trump's top advocates for about 7 years, it's like, I've had enough. I'm done with this. I don't need this guy that it's constantly. I don't need the guy who's
I'll say something
by
real
his
quick.
ego. I don't need the guy that doesn't have the intelligence to understand legislation.
I'll say one thing real quick, and then Kyle. Last night, Sean Spicer was talking about how he was a witness in the Mueller investigation, and that it cost him 6 figures to defend himself, not even as a target, but a witness.
Right.
And how does that happen? He said, because when Mueller says, I want to talk, you could say something seemingly innocuous that they could interpret or use as a crime against you. So you have to pay lawyers to handle your communications. You could say something as simple as, well, when I was texting my friend the other day, I mentioned, that's a violation of the Presidential Records Act. We got him. We got him, ladies and gentlemen.
How does texting your friend violate the Presidential Records Act?
Sean Spicer. No.
Donald Trump is on audio being like, I could have declassified this. I could have declassified this document. I didn't. Look at the document. That is so comically criminal. It'd be like me robbing a store, no mask, yet look like leaning into the camera saying, give me the money or I will murder you. Like that, it is comically criminal.
No, hold on. The point I'm making is, for one, that's what Sean Spicer said he had to call his lawyers about. Whether they're going to charge him or not, they can take anything you do and argue it was or wasn't a crime. The saying is, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. The point is, there's no way to avoid. Look at Michael Flynn. He wasn't even being investigated and said, he lied to...
Donald Trump increased the penalties for the Presidential Records Act while in office in reaction to Hillary Clinton, under the idea that he wanted people in the future who were president, who violated the Presidential Records Act, to be held accountable to that standard. If he wanted other people to be held accountable to that standard, he should hold himself to that standard.
To us, now we got him. if my point is simply this, that the claims, the indictments and the allegations against Trump have not been proven. I don't trust a weaponized DOJ, especially when we know Hunter Biden is involved in illicit business dealings. We know Joe
Again, there's more special counsel investigations into Hunter Biden than there is Donald Trump.
Biden there was a request made by Devin Archer to contact, not Devin Archer. There was a request made by Burisma Partners for Hunter to contact, quote unquote, DC. Then we get a month later, Joe Biden flies to Ukraine to personally engage in a quid pro quo, fire a prosecutor in exchange.
Man, that's crazy. The double standards Tim Pool has. We have Donald Trump on audio saying, I could have declassified this. I didn't. Look at this document. We don't know if he's a criminal. We don't have evidence that Joe Biden went to Ukraine to pressure that prosecutor based upon trying to do it for quid pro quo reasons, trying to benefit his son's business dealings. We don't know that. That has not been confirmed in a court of law. He doesn't need proof there. He doesn't need to be confirmed in a court of law there. He doesn't need a guilty verdict there. He can just assume it, unlike when it comes to Trump. There's a double standard that Tim Pool applies to Trump versus Biden.
For $1 billion loan guarantee that he doesn't have the authority to do. When you have that stuff going on and we have whistleblowers coming out saying Hunter is protected, I'm not going to err on the side of the indictments must be true claims against Trump. But I don't want to rant. Kyle, you had a point.
No. So that kind of goes to what I'm saying. So I don't blame Donald Trump for the extreme actions that his adversaries have taken against him since he first came down the escalator. First of all, the Russia collusion hoax is one of the most disgusting acts of betrayal by a intelligence community and law enforcement community that I've ever seen. We don't need to rehash that here. I worked for Sean Hannity. I had to cover this for 2.5.
The Velvet Purge, assassinations, coups, cooing allies, cooing enemy. I mean, I think I can think of a few more.
Trump's DOJ did nothing about it.
Not just our law enforcement, but also a president at the time. It began, people never want to talk about this,
Obama,
but it began with Obama spying on him, and the media is complicit in this. When President Trump was interviewed on 60 Minutes, I believe it was with Leslie Stahl, right?
I think
he
so.
had said the Obama administration had been illegally spying on me during my entire campaign. So you said that, if President Trump would have just, locked Hillary Clinton up, You're failing to mention the fact that the persecution of Donald Trump and the traps to attack him that have now turned into this, coup with Crossfire Hurricane and now all of these phony indictments and this witch hunt, it all began while he was still then just Donald Trump.
He was just campaigning.
And Donald Trump was president for 4 years and in charge of the DOJ this entire time.
That's a valid argument.
This entire time, and they didn't do anything against any of these people. This is Trump's problem. Trump is constantly getting himself into trouble, constantly moving into unforced errors. He's constantly surrounding himself with the wrong people. Here's the thing. We originally thought that Trump, because we saw him on The Apprentice, we said, well, here's a guy who will hire well and fire well. Okay, but we forget that was just a TV show. That wasn't reality. And Trump surrounded himself with some of the worst possible people. And one of the reasons we did is...
That's one thing that you and I can agree on.
I agree as well.
Worst possible people. Okay, here's my number one gripe against Trump. It's not the crimes. It's not even the childish, sophomoric calling people meatball. What is he, 12 years old? Okay, not even that. But it's the lack of judgment, the poor judgment that he's shown over and over and over again. I mean, he has been indicted these situations. He's got this special prosecutor that's after him. He's got these judges, this DC judge, this Atlanta judge that are not going to be friendly to him. And he's out there calling them racist and calling them. It's like, what has he got, a death wish? I mean, these are the people that could cut plea deals for him. And my situation, my overarching situation is that I do not believe, we just had a new poll come out the other day, and I'm no fan of polls. I don't want to give you the impression I'm not a fan of polls now, but a new poll came out the other day. There was an AP poll that said that 64% of Americans will not vote for Donald Trump.
I don't believe that.
Okay.
But let's go back to the Russia collusion.
I disregard it. It doesn't confirm what I already believe. I disregard. I'm not aligned with what I already believe. I disregard. Okay, I'm done. I'm done. What a mess.